I have been showing these little SwitchBot buttons pressing things around my home for a number of years now, but one of the best hidden little tricks with these devices is the fact that they can become a switch and actually turn on and off things. And if you haven't used SwitchBot before, well, you're about to find out a ton about a really unique platform here in the smart home. And if you have some of these products, well, I promise you're still going to find out some pretty interesting things about the devices that you have. And that first thing is about the switch. Now, what this takes is a couple of things. You've got to use the components that you get inside the box when you buy one of these little SwitchBot buttons. It's a sticker, basically, and then you have to turn on switch mode, which leaves the arm out indefinitely until you actuate it again. As a switch, they're absolutely fantastic, and this means that you can do a lot more with the buttons, but there's actually a whole other use case that just takes one setting that many people don't seem to use in the application. See, many of you live in an apartment, and what that means is you probably have a buzzer, and that buzzer, I mean, you've got to press the thing for a few seconds before someone's even going to realize, right? And that means that you need, if you're going to use the SwitchBot, a delay or a timeline for how long the button can be pressed. And there's actually a setting inside of the application where you can leave this for 5 or 6 seconds, whatever you want to leave, with that little arm out pushing that button. Now, many of us spend a lot of time using voice assistants or other automation hubs, and this can connect with a lot of those, and we'll talk about that situation in a little bit. But if you're spending more time in those applications, you might miss the fact that actually you can create some really in-depth automations and scenes inside of the application. But what that takes is a hub, and these hubs are really interesting in and of themselves. This is the SwitchBot Hub Plus, and it has that great look to it. It's a cloud, and it also has a great light on it that just looks amazing, and just about everyone loves that light that I've shown it to. But the newer Hub Mini is a little better with this hidden feature that many people don't explore on this device. And the IR controller component of that Hub Mini is absolutely one of the best in the industry right now. Not only does SwitchBot have a huge database of different devices that you can instantly bring in, and they run you through a really simple setup process to, say, set up your TV or your air conditioner. Not only do they have that, but they have one really key feature that beats a lot of other competitors. And that's the custom device, or you choose other in the application. And when you choose that, you can actually set up just about any remote. You will find a few that won't work here, but just about any remote can be set up, and you can set those buttons as anything you want. So it doesn't have to be that the power on button is the power on. You can use it as something else. Now, there's a couple of drawbacks with this, but it led me to a really interesting use case. So what happens when you set up a custom device is that not all of the different buttons that you might program in are going to work in a voice assistant, and that's a lot of the ways that you and I control our homes these days. So what happens there is you need to get a little bit creative, and I have this panel light that I got from Sansi way back when, and it's IR controllable, and it comes with a big complicated remote. So instead of setting up one device to turn that on, I got a little bit creative, and I called it the Sansi Blue, and I pressed the blue button to turn on the power there, and then I just turned it off with the power off button, and then I set up a Sansi Orange. And so I created these different devices, and you can do this same thing with these more complex custom scenarios with the SwitchBot. Now, what that let me do with the voice assistants is turn on Sansi Orange and turn on Sansi Blue, and then it would just switch back and forth between those colors, and then I could turn it off when I wanted to. My review of the SwitchBot curtains, the link is down below, and those devices are just one of the most flexible devices anyways. But my favorite feature actually surrounds around the fact that you can pair two curtains together, and that's not something that people understand when they first see this. You can pair two of these devices and then they move together. Now, I really like, once you've kind of set it up that way, what I really like is to pair it with a remote. Now, the whole process basically becomes you set up one and then you go into the advanced settings of that one. And once you do that, then you move into setting up the second one. And finally, that's when you pair the remote. So it's a little bit of a process that's a little different than you might expect. But once you do that, you actually gain another option here, and you can actually set up these little remotes. They're just a little Bluetooth remote that can be paired with a couple of devices, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But you know, you can take that remote and you can say, I only want to open them to 50% or 40% or whatever percentage you'd like with your curtains, and you can set up the buttons to do that exact thing. And because I'm old, I get to say this is one of the coolest features, because I don't think kids use the word cool anymore. But when you attach a solar panel now into the SwitchBot curtains, you actually get access to some new features, not just permanently recharging curtains and the ability to attach it in a couple of different ways. Well, you actually get a new light sensing beta feature. So what you can do is attach one of these and then give it a few days, and you actually start to get some light data coming in, and this allows you to decide when and how much you want to open your curtains based on the level of light out and about in the world at the time. So if you want your space to be a little bit darker, well, then you can choose to open when it is a little darker out. And this gives you the ability to really customize the lighting level in your home. Now, the SwitchBot curtains weren't a perfect product, and they did have a struggle in one little situation for us, and that was in these little transition points that you have. Now, we used a really simple trick here to get them to transfer across there and bring our curtains across. Now, that was just a little bit of hockey tape. That's what we used, and not the rough stuff. It's a really smooth tape to just create a smoother transition across those spots. You can obviously still move that transition position, but this really helped us to smooth things out. One of the most useful SwitchBot products is actually just this little meter, and I think it's so underutilized at this point. But it gives you temperature and a relative humidity, and humidity is a relatively, see what I did there? Under appreciated sensor type in the smart home space. Now, that pairs incredibly well with an underutilized device type that we have from SwitchBot, which is their humidifier. So when you think about the combination of those scenes or those automations, and you take one of these meters, you place them in a room, and then you get a humidifier or you get a heater that is IR controlled. Well, now you have this ability with a few SwitchBot devices in a room to completely control the humidity and or the temperature. And this becomes a really beneficial thing. This is what I do for my kid in the wintertime. It gets really dry here. I put one of these meters and a humidifier, the SwitchBot humidifier, in his room, and it's full control on and off, and it is highly reliable. And in case you didn't know, one of the big selling features of that humidifier, and again, another reason that I don't get why people don't use this device more, is it can be a diffuser just the same as any of those fancy oil diffusers that you have. It can do the same, and it has a huge reservoir for managing all of this. One of the best ways to diagnose what's going on in your home in terms of your heating system or your AC unit or just airflow throughout your home are little sensors. And what's really great about what SwitchBot has done here is that you can pull the data out of here. So there's actually an export feature in the application, and this is done by exception. So that's how they're logging the data here. If you move 0.1 degree of a temperature here, you'll get a point logged, and then if you move 1% in terms of relative humidity, you'll get a log point as well. But with the click of a button, I got both both of those data points exported, available in Excel for a year's worth of data. Unfortunately, the remotes don't pair with the humidifiers yet, and so we don't have that kind of setup going, and we also can't use it as a quick IR controller either. But for many people, and this is something I like to focus on Automate Your Life, you know, if you're struggling, you can't get up to always push a button, well, there's actually a solution here that's really good. See, this remote does pair with the SwitchBot button. So that means you can use this to press something that is really far away, or you don't want to always be getting up to go and press. Now, if you're losing this remote and that becomes a bit of a problem, well, there's a sticky back on it. It can actually stick to a fridge as well. That's what I've done. And that's how I'm operating my SwitchBot curtains in a lot of cases. But if you're someone who wants to leave this out and about, well, you can actually use the application to find this remote, and it will sit there and beep for you to find it. One of the most powerful things that I have found with SwitchBot is its ability to connect to other platforms, and then you can really use a lot of these things that we're talking about. And that's great with Google Home and Miss A and If This Then That, but it's one of a few platforms that do a cloud connection with Samsung SmartThings that is really powerful. Now, why I say it's so powerful in SmartThings is for a number of reasons. First of all, you're going to get access to the temperature and the humidity sensors right here. That's instantaneous. You can use those to trigger automations over there and extend the automations you already have. Plus, every device type except the remote comes over into Samsung SmartThings. So you have access to extend all of these automations and to use these with other sensors and other situations in your home. And a great example of this is what I did with that humidifier situation. See, if I'm out of the house, I don't really care what the humidity is in my kid's room. And if he's not in there, well, then I definitely don't care. So I can set up these different automations that are based on us being home as recognized by Samsung SmartThings, and also in the evenings when he's asleep in the room. Now, I'm not here to say that SwitchBot is unreliable. It's actually one of the most reliable solutions that I've put into my home, and that's one of the reasons I keep showing it here. But it is always a bit of a tip or a bit of a trick in how to keep things reliable, and SwitchBot is the same. There's a couple of things that if you know, you can do just about anything with this system. Number one, you can add additional hubs, and this allows you to ensure that you have connectivity to all of these different devices throughout your home. So you don't have to just rely on one hub to manage your entire home with this system. It's a bit of a mesh-like system in that if you add a different hub into a different part of your home, it will pick up connectivity to the devices that are closest to it. Now, as you open up the application with that knowledge in mind, one of the things that you will notice is a little bit of a sequence. So you won't see the device or it'll be grayed out, and then it'll go to a Bluetooth connection oftentimes, and you'll see the little Bluetooth symbol, and then last you'll see it connect to your hub. And once it does that, then you've got this ability to manage everything in the application. But if you're sitting there and you're watching your application and every once in a while it flips over, a device flips over to Bluetooth, well, that's actually losing connection to the hub. So now you know you could add another hub, and that would help to manage the connectivity here. Or maybe you've just got a little bit of interference and you've got to move. It's using that Bluetooth at 2.4 gigahertz, so it's just like your Wi-Fi and your Zigbee devices, so you could really have some interference going on there. One of the biggest secrets, though, is the fact that you don't just have to wait for Amazon.com to have stock, and SwitchBot has their own website, they have their own ordering system. All the links are down below. You can go check those out, and this gives you the ability to buy internationally from SwitchBot. You don't just have to feel like, oh, it's only for US people. Now, this is part of a series of hidden tips and tricks videos that we're creating so you get more out of your smart home. Go check out those videos now. There's a playlist up on screen. Otherwise, guys, thanks for watching today. And of course, don't hate, automate.